Welcome back to Two Homers and a Realist. This is the start for us of spring practice. Spring practice, how long has it been going? 2 weeks?
Probably third week.
This will be
Third
the
week.
end of the third week.
End of the third week. So we're diving into this right at the right time. I'm Steve.
Lucas.
Connor.
Jay.
So guys, we have a lot to cover. But let's start with, I ran a poll a couple weeks ago, and the way I answered it was, I think the most important thing right now to be looking for is depth, that position groups have depth. I love hearing about a particular player that's looking great, that is fitting out in the uniform, that has got all the right weight if he's gained weight or lost weight because that's what he needed to do, or he's getting stronger and he's got whatever accolades. That's great, but I don't know if I can count on that. What I feel like I can count on is if there's a lot of depth at a position group, and it sounds like we've got a lot of depth in some key areas and then lack some depth in some other areas. But I don't know, how did you guys answer that poll? What were you interested in the spring?
What were the choices?
So individual player, is injuries one of them?
I think I did individual player. I wanted to hear.
Yeah, it's key players looking great. Position groups are deep, and as a team, we are bigger/stronger.
I think I picked that one. No, I might have picked position.
I picked depths.
I picked individual players acting good because you can win a ton of games if you've got 3 superstars on offense and 2 stars on defense. I mean, you obviously need each level of the defense to have good players, but if you've got an incredible safety, which we do, you've got a guy that should have probably won the Butkus or at least been in the top 3 in the Butkus last year, and then if you can fill in a defensive line position with somebody that can maybe get a bunch of sacks or run stopper, and you get one great player at each level of the defense, and then obviously your quarterback has to be great no matter what. That's the position that matters the most. And then 1 or 2 receivers that can just get open all the time. Running back, I mean, we showed last year we didn't have a single great run until the bowl game, right? Was it Sawchuk that busted off the long run against Arizona?
No, he had like an 80-yarder against
Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State, he had a big one.
He finished his last 5 games at over 100 yards.
But we went through like 3/4 of the season without having to run longer than like 27 yards.
Oh yeah, it was pretty bad.
Pathetic,
Yeah.
And we still won a bunch of games. So you don't have to have a superstar running back, but you have to have receivers with the ability to get open and the quarterback throw it to them. So to me, the individual player breakout is what I want to hear, much like we're hearing about Burks.
I just don't know if I trust it is the problem. I guess I've been burned
We've been
so many
burned a bunch of
times.
times on defense specifically.
Yeah, I just feel like that. Well, I mean, in Freeman, and that was a lot of fall camp. But you hear about these guys that are so great.
G Freaky?
They're doing so many amazing things. And
Yeah,
then
but what's
it
funny
doesn't
is the first time he
materialize.
touches the ball,
He got a
he
touchdown.
could go reverse for a touchdown.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
And
but
then,
I mean,
did he run back a punt for a touchdown?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next season?
The first game.
So yeah.
Yeah.
The first time he touched the ball at the beginning of the season, and then he just benches ass
That's
the
it.
rest of the time.
I mean, I think a lot of that too is us as fans. We want, what Britton and other coaches are seeing as those breakout guys at what they really are. I think Britton may use it more as a tactic to his team to say, hey, this is the guy that's standing out to me right now. Gavin Freeman's the receiver who's not going to be on the field very much. That's standing out. You starters need to step up your game and bring it to another level. Yeah. So, and I don't know how much we're going to get, that face value statement from Brent to say this is a guy who's doing really well. Like he called someone out the other day, I think Sears, who has never played a snap, I don't think. And it's like, okay, that's random.
I think he's the strongest guy on the team.
Yeah, so and which is great. Like, and I hope that comes to fruition where it's like, all right, not only is he getting called out during spring practice, but we see some sort of result on the field because of that. And that's why I just take some of these things with a grain of salt with what we're hearing out of camp. And some of the videos we've seen, I mean, it's great that Brent's letting the media
Yeah, there's a bit more
practice
access
and
this year.
stuff, to show some of the matchups, the one-on-one matchups between offensive line and defensive line, which we've seen the defensive line really control a lot of that for obvious reasons. So, I mean, that gives us a little bit of a sneak peek, but I don't think until we roll out those first 22 guys on the team, game one, we're not ever going to know for sure who's done what the best.
Yeah, I think this particular spring game, even more so than most any other year, is going to be very difficult to even gauge what you're watching at all. Because I do think the starting defense should be a very, very, very good defense. And you have a young offense, the young quarterback, new coordinator, a patchwork O-line, all that working against you in spring ball.
Yep.
They should not look good, honestly.
The defense completely should dominate.
Jackson Arnold should have like a really not good day.
Yeah.
And
truthfully,
and the defense is so good. I don't.
That's
think
what I mean.
we're
That's
appreciating.
that's why he should not
Both
have a good
relatively
day.
and absolutely. They're very good. So yeah, I think.
I mean, back to the poll question with depth. I mean, that's, and not to maybe dive deeper into it, but I mean that unit as a whole is by far the deepest from a defensive standpoint. The one area that you look at defensively that we need a little bit more depth is that interior defensive line. That's the only area on that side of the ball that I'm like, man, kind of scratching my head a little bit. But we have so much in other parts of the field on defense where it's like, okay, you can maybe mitigate that risk a little bit with Stutzman coming back, with Bowman coming back, with the development of that secondary that we have. So
it's been so long that me personally, have just forgotten it. But to roll to the third string players that you're mentioning in the secondary or at corner, and they were legit top 150, 200 players in the country, and you're like, we have not seen this kind of depth. We're not used to it.
how are we going to get people on the field?
It's
Like,
been
it's a good problem.
Over a decade
We have
since we've
6
had this problem.
linebackers that could rotate in and out of there.
Yeah.
And you know the competition is going to push everyone, steel sharpening steel, whatever. It's going to get stronger and stronger, and it's great to hear.
I think it's iron sharpens iron is the term.
I think steel sharpens steel. I think so. I'm going to go with that.
I don't think so.
I've always heard it was steel.
Huh.
It's a Minecraft thing.
You
I
always hold that. I heard that.
think. So offensively, not as much depth, but there is depth. Really, I feel like at every position except offensive line. That's the obvious weakness. That's the real only point of major concern. I think receiver is a very deep group. Quarterback sounds really deep.
Receivers
How is
extra super deep, because the one player that they're talking about almost as much as Burks is Hester.
Yeah.
I mean, where does he even fit into?
and
he
Petaway.
wasn't. He
We wanted
wasn't
to see
even
Petaway
on
all
the,
season and never got to.
J.J. Hester wasn't even, on your 8th man bingo card for wide receiver, and they're talking about his camp's been incredible. It's the first time he's been healthy of the 2 seasons he's been here.
Yeah, I mean, and look at that conversation we're having this time last year with that group. And we're like, crap, like we don't know. We don't know.
We didn't know what Andrew
We
Anthony's
don't
going
know
to be.
who
Yeah,
Dylan
if
Gabriel's
We were
gonna
hoping
fall to.
we were hoping
If-
Anderson was
We
going
were
to
like,
step
we
up.
have Stoops. That was
Yeah,
what we
if
thought we had.
Andrew Anthony comes back, he was definitely wide receiver 1 last year.
Yep.
If he can come back to his form, which is a if, that's big time.
Anderson was a playmaker
Nick
to
Anderson.
the extreme.
You've got Jalil Farouk for
Nah.
however much we were upset with him. He's a solid receiver.
We were worried
He's not
about
number 1.
We were worried about Gibson dropping balls.
Yeah.
He was making acrobatic catches last
Yes,
season.
Gibson, Petaway, and then you got Deion Burks that comes in. That sounds like he's our next first-round wide receiver
Yep.
in the draft.
You do have
You got
Freeman.
J.J. Hester. You still have Freeman. You have
You lose Stoops.
you
but
have
outside of
three
that,
you have 3 4-star freshman receivers that came in. One of them's a 6'6" giant. It's wild.
No, it really is, and the running back position,
As
I feel like, is getting
and
really
we're
good.
getting more recruits that are committing to that position, which is crazy.
It's exciting.
Well,
Like they're coming in with depth.
And it's a running back room that hasn't even added the number 1 running back in the country because he's not an early enrollee.
I know.
yeah.
So he shows up in 2 months.
And he
That's
could change the look of that room as well with how he runs. I mean, he could be a complete difference maker in terms of a closer or in terms of just however you want to use him. He's going to kind of change the pace a little bit. I think something we haven't talked about as well, not to maybe shift gears too much, but DeMarco staying as
That's a great
getting the
thing.
extension is a really big deal. We haven't talked about that. since
Ohio
last time
State
we
came
met.
after him hard.
Yeah, interviewed with an NFL team apparently. So I know that's been talked about on the wavelengths extensively, so we don't have to talk about it much. But I think just solidifying him, and that's probably a big reason that we got the commit we got last week. A 4-star kid out of Texas somewhere, I think.
Yeah, Blaylock.
Current
Yeah.
4-star.
Yeah, current 4-star. His
Current
dad,
4-star.
his dad played in the NFL for I'm not sure how many years. And then that Blaylock was part of his high school 4x100 relay team that set the national high school record.
Yeah, shattered
Yeah.
records.
The second place team would have
Yeah.
set the record.
Yeah.
Right. That's what we said. And
How about
it's so
that?
crazy. Which I think, I mean, again, out of that group specifically, the depth is great. Now, Lucas, back to what you were saying earlier, didn't see a lot from that group early on last year. Could chalk it up to O-line play or whatever else. But now we need DeMarco to say,
I think offensive coordinator.
yeah, and coordinator. But now we need to say, all right, like DeMarco, Levy's not an excuse anymore. It sounds like you're going to have.
Barnes said he was banged up.
Barnes was
He
banged
wasn't
up,
normal.
Yeah.
I
Sawchuk
just want to see that room take off.
Sawchuk
You know what
must
I mean?
have been, because as he did have we knew he had a hamstring thing
Right.
going on, but he was still playing. But as it got more and more healed, he finished the season so well.
Season
Yeah, but
went
did
better
he,
and better
did he
for him.
re-injure the bowl game?
He
Some?
did tweak it.
Yeah.
He might be something he's just going to constantly deal with. And then Hicks is the most physically gifted looking player.
I don't know. I think Robinson is.
And when you
Robinson's at it
from
from Carl Albert.
Carl Albert, well, I think Hicks is
he's
still
a
more
freak.
built though. That's a kid you don't even talk about. I mean,
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in that room. We got the Washington
just-
transfer, Megwa, or
yeah.
that room is stacked.
Yeah.
So
So let's go to the big problem.
Someone's got to make the thing.
Offensive line.
I will say this: the thing with Sawchuk, got better at it, making players miss in the open field or breaking ankle tackles. That has to get better as a group in general. Because the last year there were times it wasn't just the offensive line not giving you space.
Yeah,
Our
6
guys were
yards-
getting tackled.
6 yards past line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
They're not making the one guy miss to get 40 yards.
Yeah.
They're getting tackled at 70 yards. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that, what you bring up, Lucas, which is sort of the reasons for concern, not necessarily a doom pod, but
Elephant in the room. Literally, elephants.
definitely a bunch of elephants in the room. Hopefully elephants, not small
they
rhinos.
need to be elephants. Yeah.
Offensive line, and just fold into that what we're not hearing, because we're hearing a lot of great things, a lot of accolades, a lot of this is going to be great. Let's talk about what we're not hearing, and the silence is deafening about certain things. But start with the offensive line. How concerned are you guys?
Out of a scale of 0 to 10, I'm at an 8.5
I was gonna say 8.
of scared.
Yeah,
I'm at an 8.
I'm petrified.
So
I was the second our bowl game was over, I was just super concerned about.
Well, it was the second Caden Green left.
Yeah, Caden Green
Really kind of started tipping the scale.
It did panic.
I'm not
Yeah.
disagreeing with any of that, other than to say I'll take the under. I think that there's a lot of pessimism there that is as if we don't have people that can do the job. I mean,
Sexton's took
but
But
Caden
I've been
Green's
hard-
job with like 3 or 4 games to go.
Yeah, I've
Because
been
Caden Green,
hard.
like he even wanted to play,
right.
and Sexton stepped in there and manned up.
But like I've been really hard on Beanbo for several years.
You have
But what's crazy is that people keep coming after him. I mean, Alabama legit tried to steal Bill Beanbo. And that doesn't happen if you don't know what you're doing. But I'm tired of Bill having to patchwork together our offensive lines for several years now,
yeah.
where the young guys are just not up and coming and taking roles and filling positions.
Well,
The Caden Greens of the world hurt. That's a kid that was young and would have been a big time contributor that you're bringing up through your program. But you've got to have way more than that.
Well, that's indicative of the problem, right? That you've got a guy that has a lot of promise. He doesn't completely solidify in the role, and then he leaves. And then you've got this constant rotation where we're getting every year deep into the schedule before we feel like we've got the 5 guys. And it's not it should be more surprising and concerning to us than it probably is that we see these rotations and these guys switching positions in October.
But
I mean,
that's
there's a
happened for a
chance-
decade with Bill Beanbo.
I know,
feel
but,
like, though.
to me, this is what's upsetting to me.
And sometimes it's been fine. Sometimes they've been
Yeah.
Joe
Good
Moore
moves.
winning,
Yeah.
yeah.
But
Well, that's only happened when you got guys that have stayed.
yeah.
Like they've developed as sophomores to where they
Right.
were pretty good, and
Right.
junior seniors are awesome.
This is what bothers me, and not that there's all kinds of players that for whatever reason go to a smaller school or a little bit lesser of a program, etc. And you can put all those pieces together, and they could be a great offensive line. But in theory, right now, our starting left guard is from North Texas. Our starting center is from Miami of Ohio, if he gets back from injury.
Right.
Our starting right guard is he's a recruit. He's a recruit. If it's Heath Azeta, okay.
Azeta, yeah.
So he's a young kid growing up. And our right tackle is a Michigan State guy.
Yeah.
is like how I don't feel like you can roll into the SEC year after year.
I agree.
Replacing your offensive line with good players from lesser programs.
Who's at left
Because
tackle?
that's so
Who's
different.
getting left tackle? spot?
Sexton.
So that's what's different about that unit than everywhere else in our program, where we'll look and find a guy. If there's a guy that will fit our program great, we're going to, in the portal, we'll go get him.
Andrew Anthony was a perfect
But
example.
we're not, and that was sort of out of desperation or a need. I'm not going to call it desperation, but need. But we don't want to be the type of program who's trying to rebuild through the portal.
Not an O-line.
constantly. Not in any position.
No, not a position group.
Yeah, you just like
You wanna
here and
plug
there,
players.
plug, but not.
Yeah, like you pick,
Not a group.
You pick up
Yes.
Burks, and if he's a real
Yes.
playmaker, then great job. Or even McCullough.
Or
And
even like a
McCullough's
Trace
great in
Ford
Indiana, we
or
bring him
whatever
in.
you wanna call
And
it.
even the backups we're talking about on offensive line is a guy from Washington and the kid we picked up from USC. I mean, even the backup roles
Yeah.
are players from other programs.
Well, I
He's,
would
he's
actually-
missed the last 2 classes for sure.
I would actually feel more confident if there were more North Texas guys and fewer Michigan State, USC, and those guys. Because if a guy goes to those programs and can't succeed, it's because he's getting beat out by better players. You may find a diamond in the rough at North Texas
Who's
or
moving
Oklahoma
up, right.
State or something like
Which
that.
it sounds like, what is it, Fabici, whatever.
Yeah.
Sounds like he's excellent.
and
Playing
that can happen, and that's
right.
great.
So you exactly you
but
want
let's
the
not make that our trademark of how we build
Exactly.
our line.
Well,
The USC guy started
at Florida
at Florida
and USC.
and USC, and now he's here. I don't think he's ducking competition leaving USC. I think he just didn't want to be there anymore.
And that could be, and that happens.
Yeah.
But you can't. You're not going to get that many guys because those programs don't lose the best players.
Well,
they
how
lose
often
the
too do you
secondary
talk
players.
about the cohesion
well, that's what I was about
of a thing?
You need,
And the
you need-
O-line
you
is-
need a pedigree there and you need. I would almost rather these young guys that have come up through the system get in there and play together and say,
the whole way?
"This is my unit. I'm going to play my position as good as I can. I'm going to learn. You're going to learn next to me. You're going to learn next to me,
And we're gonna know
gonna
each
go
other so
for
well.
3 years at least. For 3 years, we're going to be this unit, and we're going to grow together, and we're going to become a better unit." And
That's a
and
great point.
Bring it forward like that. We have not had that.
College
to your
sports
point.
in general is going away from all that.
I would,
Yeah,
but
with
that's the
culture that
position
we're
you can't be.
established. Yeah, you
so,
have to have that.
like receiver, yeah, come on in. You're an all-star. You're going to be the guy because you're on an island. But those guys have to work more than any other position. We've talked about this. They have to work as a cohesive single entity. And
Yeah, I'd almost say it's like offensive line,
Linebackers. Yeah.
like those are the
Yeah,
two groups
playing off of
you've
each
got
other.
to keep people that.
And
are,
look at what our linebacker
Yes.
core is right now.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of dudes who have chosen to stay, to work within the system, whether or not
Develop.
they're getting all the snaps and everything. I mean, you have McKenzie who could go probably start at the majority of the Power 5 schools right now. And he's choosing to stay, fight for a spot, may not, and
he might start. I mean,
panic even.
I'd be
But they're also Brent is probably he's a top 3 linebacker coach in the country.
True.
yeah, but so is
So that helps.
but Beanball is
Yeah,
too.
that is true.
That's what I don't understand. That's
Or
my
at least
that's,
top-
my,
top
but he's
15.
never been able to bring
But
those
that's
guys
my
in. Is the weird
disconnect.
thing.
that's my disconnect with B. I
It's-
don't get it.
And the only saving grace, charitable take I can conjure up as a homer would be it's not been a point of focus up to this point, and maybe they can start to rectify it now that they've filled
Like as
so
a
many
staff?
other areas as a staff. And so now they can focus on that, saying, all right, we've got a lot of depth, we've got a lot of what we want at all these other positions. Now we can focus a lot of resources and maybe NIL money on these offensive lineman guys and go get the guys we need. But that is a project.
So
And
it
we're
sounds
talking
like
multi-year.
it sounds like the two coaches who are the toughest to play for on our team is DeMarco and Beanbo.
Beanbo.
The difference is one is an NFL All-Pro DeMarco. So you're gonna listen. And even though Bill has a track record, I don't know. It'd be a little different if it was Trent Williams that was just dragging your butt all day long in practice.
Well, it'd be different if
I-
it
I-
was a guy who could look
to me,
a
that's
string-
my opinion.
Even a string of 5 stars
Because
that he
Beanbo,
brought through.
but
you know?
Beanbo's got way more skins on the wall than DeMarco does in terms of sitting
NFL
people a
success.
leg and all that
yes,
stuff.
he does.
But it
not
doesn't
from-
hold
from
water
start to
on the
finish.
field and coaching. I think DeMarco Murray's telling me that I need to do this.
I mean, we have the highest paid left tackle in NFL history. We have the highest paid right tackle in NFL history. We've got
Creed's about to be.
Creed's probably going to be maybe the second highest paid center in NFL history.
How are we not
I mean,
leveraging that?
I don't know.
I don't, and it may be a thing where it's
They put out a graphic saying these 7 guys that are NFL starters made $80 million
Maybe
last
that's
year
part of the
or whatever.
problem. Maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe, again, back to NIL, maybe they're not thinking, they're resting on that laurel rather than think, oh,
The
that's
now.
great, but
The
you've
now.
also got to pay these guys today.
Yeah,
You've
and that's
also got
we
to
talked
go
about this
for
at the
it
end of the
today.
season, where Steve, exactly what you said. We've firmed up for the majority across the board everywhere, except for offensive line, and yet I still see us. And Brent's a defensive coach. I understand it. SEC's a defensive-based league. You're going to take guys, but we keep taking guys there. We're not. I don't feel like we are putting those efforts into the
don't
offensive
feel like it
line.
either.
Where and maybe I'm kind of speaking out of both sides of my mouth here, where I'm like, oh, let's have the cohesion of the guys who are coming up. But right now there is a need, and
Well, you can have both.
Every
You're
single
Oklahoma.
coach on that staff understands the importance of an offensive line.
We've also
They-
missed
yes,
out in
they
the
should.
last 5 years. We've been down to the final 2 schools
And we-
on 10 or 12
Easily.
of the best offensive
Yeah.
linemen in the country, and it's like 2 went to Texas, 2 went to A&M, 1 went to
Clemson.
Bama, 1 went to Clemson. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've literally been in the running and been to the final day with so many guys that did turn out to be incredible, and we're just not close.
Yeah, our
And that
our
could
strikeout
be-
rate is crazy.
That could be NIL. It could also be
even pre-NIL.
we're looking, yeah, and so we could just be looking at the wrong guys.
I think some of it too, Bill's personality. is
That's what I mean.
probably-
I think it's really hard for a young kid to go
They
play
know
for
they're
that
going to get their
coach.
asses handed to them in camp. You know,
But you shouldn't care if you got your eye on the prize for the
Right.
right thing.
I think the right kids
yeah,
understand
the
it.
mature ones with
But I don't know
the
if-
right intelligence.
I don't
would
know
wanna
that
go
you're
play
going to
for
find 5
Bill
of them every year
and
that
have
do that.
Jerry Schmidt be their strength coach, because
Yeah.
the track record for those 2 guys is incredible. But some kids just want their coach to be nicer to
and
them
as a
or
good
whatever.
recruiter, you should recognize that and realize early on, I can't spend a lot of time on this kid and make him my number one because he's a 50-50 that he'll come here. And back to Connor's point, it shouldn't be 5 guys you're replacing every year. It needs to be cohesive units. And your nice problem to have would be we lost a guy to the NFL early because we made him so good and he left the squad, not we're scrambling to try and find somebody to fill a gap.
And I may be speaking way out of turn here because I don't know how it. This would be a good question for like a Casey Gundy or something. But if Bill's not a guy that can go and connect with these kids and say and pitch them this vision of why they should be here and what they should expect, regardless of his personality or anything else, and maybe they do, but bring someone like a DeMarco who can say, "Hey, Bill's going to give you this offensive part. Look at these running backs that I have that are going to be running behind you, who are going to make you a Joe Moore type of offensive line because you're going to be allowing these guys to get this amount of yards or et cetera, blah, blah, blah." Like, start supplementing his recruiting efforts with something else to say there's more of a vision than just saying, you're like, Lucas, to your point, getting your ass dragged by Bill every practice and having a coach that's hard to play for but is going to get results for you. Like, there's got to be some sort of
But
plan
see,
in
like you got
place.
too. What's irritating? So, like, remember Savion Byrd? He leaves. He played really good. Or he had some problems in the Florida State bowl game, but for the most part, he played really well for getting one of his first starts against a good defensive line. And we thought coming into this last season that he probably was going to have a spot locked up. Well, he couldn't hold on to it, so Caden Green took his spot halfway through the season. But that's the type of player where he was a big-time recruit. He was a big-time 4-star kid out of Texas. We beat a bunch of people out for him. He's got to be able to get on the field and make an impact. And he should be a starter right now. He should be our starting right guard. Caden Green should be our starting left guard.
Yep.
Sexton should be our left tackle. Everett or whoever our center. We should be literally just looking to who is going to step up and play right tackle
Well,
for us.
the question
That's
that
what this season should look like. We should be filling one spot on this offensive line, and instead we're filling like 5.
5. Well, but the question I have to ask is, what is it going to take from Bill or DeMarco, but honestly at this point from Seth Luttrell and Joe John Finley to get the mindset of the offensive linemen to the level that Brent is getting from his linebackers, from his whole defense, saying, I'm freaking all in on this crap. I don't care what I have to do. I don't care if I'm behind whomever. I'm going to go work my ass off. I'm going to go earn a spot because that is an issue with Savion Byrd. Savion Byrd just looked like he didn't give a shit a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And like that's not even just Savion Byrd. Caden Green apparently is the same way. And Steve, kind of what you said, are we just not looking at the right guys?
Think about Bray Walker.
Yeah, we cannot.
Was he a 5-star?
We cannot
Yeah,
get
Bray
any
Walker-
more
Bray
first
Walker's
down
is
guys.
a local guy. Southmore's 10 minutes from here. He's a 5-star kid. I have a friend whose son played high school with. He was on the same offensive line with him. He went to UCO and started 4 years at center at UCO. And he tells me he goes, why are they even looking at Bray? Like, he's got the size, but he said, I'm telling you right now, he doesn't have it. Like, he doesn't have that dog in him. He's going to be too soft. Unless they can change his mentality, he's not going to be a guy. And sure enough, the dude was never anything.
Nope.
And you have to recognize that.
One of the biggest dudes on our team, too.
Maybe that's
Yeah.
something that's a shortcoming. I mean, as good as Bill is, and let's call it 5 categories of what it takes to be a great offensive line coach, maybe he's great in 4 of the 5, and one of them is just he can't identify the right guys. He just sees a guy and he thinks, I'm good enough, I can make this kid something that he can be, and he needs to look and be serious and say, you know what, this kid's got the talent, but he's kind of, to bring an extreme example, he's Marcus Dupree. And he's just never going to put the work in. And never
I think
gonna
what he
achieve
might
what
be,
could be.
I think he might be really good at evaluating the under the radar guys as guys
that he can develop
turn into players, and
Which are the
not
hungry
very
guys.
good, not very good at all at picking B4 and 5-star guys.
Well, and you look at the last group who did kind of had that dog. You had Cody Ford, who undersized. You had Ben Powers, wasn't talked about. JUCO.
Yep.
You had Alvarez. Didn't do. He went to the NFL. I think he's back in the XFL.
Samia.
now.
But even Creed,
Drew Samia. But he pushed those guys to another level where they were outperforming their abilities.
yes,
And maybe that's who he should go after.
Yeah.
Yeah,
maybe
that's
he
what I
should
mean. I
just
think
go
that's
find the
what
guys that like
Hito Zeta, who's everyone's raving about right now and projected to be our starting right guard, was I think he played tight end up until his senior year of
That's
high
another thing we
school
have history with.
or something, right?
Gabe Eichert.
And so
was
he
a tight
played-
end. Lane Johnson was a quarterback who they brought in to play tight end, who became a right tackle.
But this kid,
I mean,
apparently, like watching his film from last year, for his first year playing offensive line, people were like, "Wow, this kid's really got it." But it's his first year playing offensive line. He needs to put on 30 pounds, and we'll see what happens. And boom, that's what he's done. He, redshirted all last year, put on the weight, practiced, and now it looks like he's a player. He's just a very
maybe
again under the radar guy that's like we can make him into something. But when when there's a Caden Green out of St. Louis who's just physically dominating everyone he's playing against already, maybe it's just too hard to evaluate. I don't know.
and that obviously can be because you always have that problem of what am I comparing him to? And he didn't have to work that hard in high school. He may not be a guy who can work hard. So maybe flip it. Instead of looking for the guy who is a 10 out of 10 in all these other respects, say strength, he's a 7 out of 10, could be stronger. Athleticism, he's a 7 out of 10, could get more athletic. Attitude, meanness, he's a 10 out of 10, and this kid can get there. And that's the guy you're going after because that describes the 2018 line. Those guys were mean as hell. And they were able to get each other meaner, get each other stronger, and not just come up with shortcomings, but actually get better and elevate from a 7 to an 8 to a 9 in all those other areas. And say, we can overcome that. We can't overcome your attitude. If your attitude is, I'm not going to be a guy that's going to work hard, you're never going to make it here.
And what worries me is we had 2 years under Brent where we had an opportunity to take some of these lesser guys and do this development kind of process that we're talking about to say we're gonna show people that we can develop through and through. We're gonna promote you up, and then we're gonna bring in the next 7s, 6.5s rated guys, and are gonna say this is what we are going to turn you into. Now we haven't done that. Like now it's, oh shit, we're going to the SEC. We're either going to have to take our licks and say we're going to play who we have, develop them, and then start developing in class underneath, or we're going to have to keep doing this plug and play stuff with transfers.
You
and
have
et
to
cetera.
plug and play because you have a Jackson Arnold, right? You can't just
I know you can't write it off.
like, hey, dude,
Exactly.
we're gonna
You
we're
can't-
gonna
yeah, you can't
develop
take a
our own
chance.
line while you
Exactly.
suffer. Back
Right.
here.
Well,
And that's what I'm saying. We had 2 years to do that.
I mean, you were also talking earlier about, maybe DeMarco going and helping because, we've got this running back that you can block for, blah, blah, blah. Well, how many years do we have a Baker, a Kyler, a Hurts, Caleb Williams, where you could go and say, you're going to have running backs, but you're going to have this quarterback that's awesome.
this guy.
And he's going to help you look better because he can scramble in the backfield.
We've
whatever.
had that every year.
So when you look at the end,
Yeah.
when the NFL
Even
guys
with
are
Dylan,
looking,
we had that.
they're watching tape, but they can also look at stats and say, well, this guy only gave up 1 sack the whole season because the quarterback was so good at getting rid of the ball or
Quarterback had X
scrambling
amount
out,
of
whatever.
time to
so
throw
you
the
can
ball.
you can
Yeah, but
leave-
32
can hang your hat on that,
teams-
too.
32 teams are going to watch Caleb Williams film, and on that film, there's 5 guys blocking for him.
What
That's
if
all you have to say.
I'm going to suggest something
kids.
I don't believe, but it could have some credence and it could be used as an excuse. I don't want to believe this, and I don't believe it. But what if you roll back and look at those teams from 16, 17, 18, and you're talking about, one, offenses that were some of the best offenses in the
Better
history of college
schemes.
football, better schemes and everything, better everything.
better everything compared
Better
to the last
everything.
2 years of Jeff Lebby.
They compared anything better. They were playing in the Big 12, which was a very soft league defensively, especially at the time, more softer than it's been in the last 2 or 3 years, even, and definitely going up against their own defense in practice, which was pretty soft. Is it a confidence thing? Is it that they just got an attitude of we can do anything that we want, and they got to a higher level because of that? Whereas these guys were actually going up against a pretty good defense in practice and obviously better defenses competitively on the field, and it kind of got them down or made it where they couldn't have the time to develop. I don't know. I don't believe it, but maybe that's some of it.
Even
I
some of
don't
those
know.
Big 12 defenses that were soft, those kids that were in the really good offensive line core went to the NFL and they got a little. I mean, most of them got more than a cup of coffee. Ford's still playing in the league. Samia played for a
Almost
couple
all
of
of them
years. I mean, they're
Powers.
still
Powers is still in the league.
They're still like
No,
6 or 7
they were great.
What
I'm
I'm
not saying they
saying is,
weren't
like,
great.
Orlando
I know what
Brown.
you're saying. Like they had
Orlando Brown was a 3-star.
They
that
got a chance
Yeah.
to
he got
get
on
great.
signing day because Tennessee didn't have enough room for him.
Yeah.
or something.
I'm saying in this theory, I don't believe that they got a chance to be great because they were able to one, believe in themselves,
Gotcha.
and also had enough time to develop. Whereas now it's like you're learning, you're
In the
building
fire
the plane
against SEC.
while you're flying. I don't know. Maybe there's something to that. I tend to doubt it. Let's talk about some other things that we're not hearing about that are concerning. We're not hearing a lot about Jackson Arnold, and maybe it doesn't need to be said. Maybe they know how good he is, and they're not spending a lot of time. We don't need to razzle dazzle, but it is concerning that you're not hearing, wow, he's just lighting it up. And
I don't
he's
think he
doing
has
this
time
and
to throw.
that. That's scary.
And I saw a video the other day, and Petaway was leading the team. Like they do the stretches, and they all come together and all that. The hyping and hooting and hollering stuff. And Petaway was the leader of the whole team at midfield doing all that. That seems crazy to me. Why is that not Jackson
I think
Arnold?
they probably take turns. I mean, it's like the captaincy stuff. Like we saw someone different each week leading stretches last year.
Yeah.
I think Britt wants to make it a point to say,
Even
if
in
you're
the
not-
spring
if you're not a-
practices.
yeah, I really
Okay.
think so.
Hopefully, I
I think
don't know.
Venables is trying to emulate as much as he can from a this is how we operate
And
type
get
of-
leadership everywhere.
Yeah, and I want everyone to feel empowered to be a leader on our team. I'm going to take the Jackson Arnold stuff as a no news is good news type of thing, where he got enough hype and he got enough praise and, even support from us specifically even last year, where if someone's not talking about him like, oh man, he's throwing a lot of interceptions in practice, or he's missing a lot of throws, or his accuracy looks bad. If I'm not hearing that stuff, I'm just thinking it's business as usual. I feel like he's taking the reins.
That's a safe assumption, I think.
And-
That's a good assumption.
I think it speaks more loudly to the fact that Hawkins is getting some praise,
and that's awesome.
and it's kind of this deja vu effect where it's, which let me be clear, Jackson Arnold is not Dylan Gabriel, and he is going to be a better quarterback than Dylan Gabriel is. But you want to hear about those guys in the ranks who aren't going to be playing and touching the ball saying, man, we're going to be in good hands if Jackson goes down, or we're going to be in good hands once Jackson leaves. I'm glad to be hearing that stuff as opposed to Jackson isn't making throws, Jackson's throwing interceptions. Does Hawkins have a chance to make a play for?
Yeah, I don't want to hear
first
that.
string?
I do not want to hear
And
that.
we're saying that last year. Like, Jackson's got a shot, right? Like, we saw Dylan last year. Jackson's got a chance. No one is saying that yet. I don't think anyone will say that. I'm not going to say it unless something crazy happens and he goes and throws 9 interceptions in the spring game. But again, just to cap it off, no news is good news with Jackson, in my opinion.
I think I like that take. One thing that we are also not hearing about, or a person we're not hearing from, is don't we have a defensive coordinator? Is this Zach Alley?
Brent Venables.
Yeah. What are we going to ever hear from this man? Is he like a man of mystery? So what's going on
It's weird
there?
they didn't have a hiring press conference. They really haven't spoken to the media any that I know of.
Have you heard anything about him being like an introvert or not wanting to do that?
Yeah, I was wondering, is some of that personal just choice? Like
Maybe.
he just doesn't want to.
He's like Bill Beaton.
It's a weird high-
talk to the media.
Weird high profile position.
I don't know. I think, from everything I've heard, Zach Alley seems like one of the guys on the coaching staff who has future head coach abilities or desires. And if I'm him and I'm wanting to assert myself and show myself as someone who wants to be in that role, I want to get in front of people and I want to show people like, hey, this is my defense and this is,
You want to make sure you don't get overshined by Brent Venables,
right? And I heard there was something I heard the other day where it sounds like Brent is actually moving more
Hands off.
station
Yeah.
to station and is engaging with the offense, and Allie is out there running his operation, which is great to hear. But I would love to hear from the guy who is going to be the face of our defense going into the SEC.
I think I saw an interview with Deshaun McCullough after one of the practices, and he said something that it kind of worried me at the time, and let me see how you guys feel. He said that Zach Alley kind of dumbs it down or explains it better than Venables does. Like when Venables gets on to you about something, it sounded like
it's a full lecture.
it's just maybe like too
much.
complex. And Zach Alley,
As
they
opposed to
said,
like,
is
okay,
really
just
good at
tell me
being
what I
like
need to do.
why
Well, that's
I
good.
needed to move.
That
these up.
worried you?
It worried me
that sounds
because
great to me.
no, it worried me in the terms of like
He thinks he has to dumb it down for the players.
no, not because he has to dumb it down. It's just interesting that
You're thinking in the past. You're like, whoa, well, what's Brent
of
been
a
doing for the
Brent
past 2
Venables isn't explaining it well.
Well,
to our
remember when
players?
Brent left in
Yes.
11 or whenever it was?
Yes.
One of the knocks by the players was that
It was
his
too
defense
complex.
was too complex.
It is. From all
And
accounts,
when
it
we
is
were bringing-
extremely
when
complex.
we were bringing Mike in to get the gang back together. We hoped was that the two of them together were
Could
gonna,
dumb it down.
that Mike could dumb it down for the guys because Brent was too complex. And so when he left, we were all like, "Yeah, it sucks to lose Brent to Clemson, but this might be good in the long run because the defense won't be as intricate, and the guys can just fly and go get the ball." Which obviously
was
didn't
not
turn out
the
to be the
case.
case.
If Brent is being hands off at all from what from the accounts we've heard he is, if he's being remotely hands off, I'm happy. I want Brent Venables to go be a head coach, and I want him to trust the defensive coordinator to run the defense that Brent wants to run. Brent has an expectation. He will never let that expectation go to the wayside and let Zach Alley be like, "Hey, I'm actually going to bring in this whole new system." It's never going to be like
Yeah, head coach
and
always
the fact
has
that he's letting
his
him
side of the
do
ball.
that, the fact that Brent's letting Allie apparently do that is, and whether it's in dumbed down terms or layman's terms or just
Well, that's
being
actually
surely
great
more
coaching
relatable
to me.
Yeah, being
if
more
you're like,
relatable to
okay, here's what
players.
he's saying, and here's what you need to do, and the guy says, okay, now that's clicking with me, and he goes
Yeah.
and does it. That's perfect.
Or
And
you
that's
want
how
Brent- you want
that's how
Brent
Stoops
yelling-
always treated the offense.
Right.
You know, he let Leach run it. He let Mangino run it. He let Long and Wilson and so on and so forth. And then the Heupel, that last year Heupel, he was like, you need to start running the ball more and stuff like that. So he actually had to get involved because Heupel wasn't getting the job done. And then he replaced him with Lincoln. And then it was like hands off again because Lincoln was incredible at calling plays. And then maybe Brent's to the point where he's got the defensive players that he wants, and he can.
I think he's got enough.
He can let
I think
Allie.
he's got enough leadership
coming back.
player-wise
Right.
on the field
Yeah.
that he
Yeah,
can
who can
let
help coach.
an alley
Yeah.
do some stuff.
Well, and you want your head coach, you want the Nick Saban-esque type where they're observing, they make an observation, you're a player and you don't understand what the heck he's saying, but then you have a Zach Alley coming over and be like, hey, here's what he means, here's what we need you to do in that situation, and that is the chain of command that needs to happen. And then you take it down even a level where you have the Billy Bowmans, to your point,
Yeah,
the
and
Billy Bowmans of the world, the Stutzman of the world who are saying, hey, do you get what Ali's saying? No? All right, here's what we're talking about.
Yeah, they
This
can
is
lead
what
their
you-
groups.
This is what you need to do. And you have that hierarchical relationship where, again, back to the word of the day, there's cohesion amongst the entire unit out there, which I cannot wait to see. I think it's going to be awesome. I think it's going to be really great to see on display in the Southeastern Conference. I think it's going to be really cool. I just want us to keep up.
I think I like all those points, and I think it's a point of optimism actually to think that maybe we got this guy out there just doing his job, and he's not. We as
He's not
fans-
concerned with talking to the media.
We as fans want to hear from him,
Right.
But the people who need to hear from him are those players out there, and if they're hearing from him and they're hearing what they need to hear, that's great.
Who's starting next to Billy at safety?
I think
It's
it's
gonna be
Robert
Peyton
Spears.
I think Robert Spurs.
Sounds
Yeah.
like every indication right now is RSJ is the one who's playing.
And it's
out
not because-
the show.
Bowen's
Bowen's such a playmaker, though.
But RSJ he's been a physical freak
Yeah.
coming out of Tulsa. He always has been. He just hasn't been healthy. Like his shoulder was hurt last year, and I think he had surgery last year, or in between last
The
season.
in between,
Yeah.
before last season.
Um,
He's huge.
Yeah, he's fast.
And
he's
he's
super
fast.
fast. He's huge.
He looks like a freaking SEC safety.
Yeah.
Like he looks the part for sure. And sometimes on the podcast, Christian is one of Christian's favorite players on defense, and for good reason. Like the guy has a nose for the football as well. Like I think he has good football smarts from other plays that he made last year, especially in the back half of the season where he was getting quite a bit more playing time. But Lucas, to your point, I mean, and back to the topic as a whole, we are not hearing a lot about Peyton Bowen. And is it something where it's kind of like the Jackson Arnold situation where
No news is good.
no news is good news? We're not hearing anything because we hyped him up last year and he's just heads down doing his job.
Well, PJ's the guy that we're not hearing a lot
And
about.
PJ as well. So, I mean, it's
He's had a shoulder
Something.
nagging shoulder. It sounds like.
I just go back to that. I don't know how we're going to get all these guys on the field, which is a great problem.
Great
Right.
problem to have. That's back
until
to the
until
heyday.
after the spring game, 3 of them decide to transfer because they're not going to get on the field.
You'll get some transfers, but the guys who know they've got a shot at it, those
don't know how
kind of
many we're
losses
gonna
don't
have.
worry me. They don't worry me.
I think it could just be being optimistic, but
3
the
homers. in a row.
defensive staff that we have, though, for them to continue to get the type of players they're getting, I think these guys actually understand.
yeah.
I'm going to come here. I'm going to get every opportunity. I still might have to wait a year or two,
Right.
but I'm going to play in an elite Brent Venables defense, and I will take my time.
And yes, and you look at all the elite programs, and we talk about, we look at them and we think, oh, thank God they're graduating all these guys, and then lo and behold, next year they're just as good because they've got a lot of guys in waiting, and those guys understand that, and they get the guys who understand that's the role, that they're not going to come in and have 3 to 4 sensational years and then move on. They're going to have to fight for their position, and it's really rare to be a 4-year starter, because if you're that good, you're probably going to the NFL, and it's even rare to be a 3-year starter because it's hard to get that that first year of the 3.
But
Your
we're-
first year is when you're a sophomore.
But we're
junior.
also thinking over the last 2 decades, we're thinking like that, and today is completely different with the transfer portal. There's no more sitting out a year. Bama could talk guys into stay in. Georgia could talk guys into stay in because, yeah, you're going to be behind this guy for this season, but then next year you're the guy. When now he can just go, well, screw it, I'll go somewhere else.
See, I
I'll
don't
be the
worry
guy
about losing
that
those guys.
year.
I don't worry about that.
Which
There's no, I have to go somewhere else and sit out a year, and then I'll be the guy.
I don't worry about
I
those
can
guys.
stay here and sit
Honestly.
behind this
Well,
guy.
and it begs the question, or maybe even underscores the situation, is the model that Brett is building, let's be specific to the defense, is the model that he's building from a culture base program. NIL is a thing. I think we're top 10 in NIL, so it's not like we're quote-unquote struggling, but you're going to have to keep pace with all those other big schools. Is the culture-based model that he has sustainable? Lucas, to your point, where, 2 years ago, on that side of the ball, we were razor thin on defense, where we're having the same conversations across the board on defense.
You go back and
that
look
we're
at,
having on
you
offense,
go back and look at the starting
offensive
defense.
line.
It's borderline embarrassing.
And now we're talking. We go from razor thin 2 years ago to almost being in the secondary. In the secondary, we're almost 3 deep.
We are 3 deep.
We're 3
No, I
deep.
meant two TOO.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
T-O-O.
yeah, TOO.
And in linebacker,
I mean,
they're saying
secondary
Lewis
and
Carter
linebacker.
looks insane right now.
So and the only
But
one that
whose job is he going to take?
defensive end, we're
He's third
3
string.
deep.
Yeah.
So is it sustainable?
See, I like it. I think that it's the perfect thing of what you're trying to do if you're Oklahoma.
Absolutely.
See, I think if you're Oklahoma, you're trying to be the Georgia and the Alabama where you're saying, here's the combination. 1, we compete for championships. We put guys in the NFL. And 2, we've got enough money, NIL money, to pay you to be the guy in waiting. And if you're not willing to do that, then go find your other position because this is not the right place for
But
you.
we're not relaxing enough to a Dabo Sweeney level where we're saying culture is
No.
all we have.
Exactly. I think that's
Right.
Yeah, I think the
mistake he's making is culture is all we have.
I think the counterbalance to the transfer portal is the NIL money.
Absolutely. And if you do it right.
But also, those guys had the winning to keep those guys
Yes,
there.
and you're going to have to get the
we
winning.
went
You gotta have
7-5 and then
Absolutely.
10-2. If you don't maintain a 9-3ish every
Plus,
year for the next
make the
couple of
playoffs
years,
every year.
you are going to lose those guys.
Oh, yes.
just because the
That's-
winning isn't there.
I
Well,
agree.
A&M didn't have a problem with it.
That's where we, but that they didn't get the winning. So I would
Texas
say
hadn't had a
that
problem
to
with
get
it.
to that point, you've got to you're trying to be elite, and elite is tough. So you're trying to get to that level where you can maintain that, and you've got to have the money in place, you've got to have the program in place, you've got to have the winning in place to keep that going perpetually. And that's the only way it's sustainable is if it really, really works. And so the Brent Venables system, if you transplant Brent Venables to, I'm going to pick on Oklahoma State or a bunch of other programs, it is not going to work because that culture is not enough to sustain it and the money's not enough to sustain it. The strategy they're going to have to employ is something totally different where they do lean on NIL and the transfer portal, but more to get guys and to plug holes and to kind of be almost gimmicky about how they manufacture wins versus at Oklahoma, you come in and you are just a winning program with top to bottom talent that you can sustain through season after season after season.
Well, you know what helps is you have 2 guys who would have gotten drafted, and Billy Bowman and Danny Stutzman, who have kind of templatized this. Look at me, look at us. We're sticking around for this because we believe in it. And then you have guys, which, assuming they stay, you have a Javante Barnes who could go somewhere and be a starting running back. You have guys that are sticking around within this initial pilot that Venables has, and I'll say he's in his pilot until next year. Give him full 4 years. You have these type of guys who can go be successful, whether it's at a different school or in the NFL itself, who are saying, no, I'm going to stick around. I'm going to play for Brent. I'm going to go play for DeMarco. I'm playing for whomever is on this staff. And we're going to see if we can make this work. And not even see if it is working.
Right.
We're at 10-2 last year. It's working. And I know we're switching gears heavily going into the SEC.
In 2 games, we should have won.
Exactly.
Right.
So yeah, we're sniffing the playoff. We're playoff contenders. I'm not saying that we would have done well in the playoff or anything like that, but we're playoff contenders. Could have played in the playoff easily, and you have some of these guys who, in the past, you look at that Cotton Bowl that we lost to Texas A&M. You have defensive players jumping ship, and they see the fire that is burning, and they're getting out, and. Thank God for Lincoln Riley, honestly. Lincoln Riley kind of righted that ship. And I know I was talking about defense, but Bob Stoops was going downhill at that point. I mean, that was the start of a very questionable couple of years for Bob. Brent's getting these guys to stick around early after a first year that was really, really tough. And then after a second year that was really pretty successful.
Yeah, he's not only they're sticking around, he's adding.
Yeah.
He added a lot.
So,
Well,
there's a lot of hope.
We transfer from let's transition from what we aren't hearing about to what we did hear about, and this will be the start of what will probably be a bunch of topics we're about to cover, which will be each and every one of them realist rants. If we had a sponsor and a soundtrack to go with it, we would be triggering that right now. The first thing that we've heard about that I think we can rant about is the change to the SEC schedule for 2024. So my understanding was, as we heard about it, they released the schedule, and then they said what was going to happen was everybody was going to get to play the OU and the Texas newcomers within the first 2 years. And so in an
8-game conference schedule.
and so in 2024 we play a certain lineup, which we know. That means in 2025 we play the teams Texas is playing, and they play the teams we're playing, right? And is that how
That's
it's
how I thought it was supposed to work.
That's how it's supposed to work. What happened?
They did the old bait and switch on us. They just said, well, we're not going to do that. We're just going to flip the home and aways and call it good. So now we don't get to play Vanderbilt. That's no fair. We don't get to play Florida. We don't get to play
Georgia.
We're not playing Mississippi State.
Kentucky.
I mean, Arkansas. Man,
and in the winners
I was
and
looking
losers.
forward to going to Fayetteville
and
in
eventually you
probably.
will get to, but in the winners and losers of this whole thing, in a year that we think 2025, I mean, some of us have some optimism for 2024, but we look at 2025 as the year that we could be a true contender.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've compared to Texas on paper, which is what else can you go on? We have the much more difficult schedule. Am I wrong?
And why did they pick those schedules?
Well,
Where did they base that off of?
From what I hear, they look back on a decade of play and said that OU was so dominant and good that they get the harder schedule as a result of that. So apparently, from crap we did back going 5, 7, 8 years ago, we get credit for that as if that translates into how good we are today.
And Texas was down.
And Texas
So
was
they
down
get
in
the-
that period, so
and-
they get the easy schedule.
But then if you go off last year, they made the playoff.
Yeah. So
They didn't beat us, but they made the playoff.
frustrating, I think, to say the least. I mean, I don't know. It's something that maybe in the big scheme of things won't matter, and we may be looking at it as a blessing in disguise if we go through a 2025 season and we say, wow, everyone's giving us recognition for playing such a tough schedule, and even though we've got a couple of losses, we're actually a high seed in the 12-team playoff. Sure, that'd be great, but
And if
I
you
don't
compare
know.
schedule for schedule, yes, you'd rather play Vanderbilt. You'd rather play. You could line up teams like LSU and Florida could be the same
Maybe.
if Florida comes up again.
And
LSU's
LSU
pretty
dips.
good, man.
Yeah, I mean, and then you're trading Ole Miss for Mississippi State. I take that trade all day long.
Take
Yeah.
that trade.
I'll take
Tennessee for Kentucky.
I'll trade Vanderbilt for South Carolina, no problem.
Yeah, Kentucky for Tennessee.
Yeah, Kentucky for Tennessee.
Alabama, Georgia is
That's a
Wash.
Wash may be actually the one advantage.
Yeah,
Because I'd say
Alabama might not be
that's
Bama
good.
without Saban.
Yeah,
But, I mean, Arkansas as opposed to Missouri. I'd take that trade.
yeah.
I mean, when you look at it side by side, it definitely looks like there's probably a 2-game swing possible in there that you would have a better record in 25 than probably 24.
It's just to me, it's frustrating because I don't know. I like to hold people to what they said they were going to do, and the reasoning behind it was just absent. They didn't tell us. They
But it makes too much sense, though.
Texas's money would come into play.
It makes too much sense to just let every team play everyone for 2 years before you create a whole new schedule.
which might even be a 9-team schedule going forward.
Or it might be a new conference that has Florida State, Clemson,
Exactly.
North Carolina, and Miami. in it.
Exactly.
We don't know, depending on what
We
happens
might
with
not
the lawsuit,
get to play
the ACC.
call a Georgia. We may not get to play a Georgia for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, we might be like Bama and Georgia, where they don't play each other for 10 years or whatever.
So or a Vanderbilt. Let's
Yeah.
choose one that would be really advantageous to play.
Yeah.
So that's
cupcake with
frustrating.
I'd like to go to Nashville.
Yeah,
I love Nashville.
it'd be a fun trip. a guaranteed win,
Yeah.
and you get to enjoy all the
Yeah,
atmosphere.
go down Broadway.
That would be fun. So that was frustrating. I think that was something that was a little hit us out of nowhere and a little bit of a frustration point. Some other things that have happened, but before we get to that, let's make some I know at least one of us won't want to do this, but let's make some record predictions. So 7-5 is the regular season prediction for 2024. If you look at the betting markets, maybe 7.5, 4.5 if you play the odds and look at how they're actually pricing it. What do you guys think? What is your over under on wins for OU as it stands right now with the unknowns and the knowns that we have? What are you expecting OU's win-loss record to be regular season next year?
I would bump the over/under to 8.5.
Okay.
I'm really, really hard pressed to take the under at 8. And it's a toss up. I mean, I think there's a couple games in there. Going to Ole Miss is going to be really tough. Going to LSU is going to be really tough. Texas,
Going to Missouri is going to be tough.
Yeah.
Missouri's going to be tough.
Those four are
Missouri
my
will be tough.
biggest worries.
Texas, Missouri just may end up being one of those teams though where by the time we get there, it's like when Missouri was in the Big 12. By the time we get there, Missouri may just not be the team that everyone thinks they are, or they could be, but
They lost one game last year, right?
They lost
go
two.
11.
They
and
lost two.
Oh, they went 10.
But
and Ole Miss lost 10 and went 10.
I mean,
If anything, I would say that Missouri was aberrationally good, though.
Yeah.
Mississippi aberrationally good. We expect LSU is going to actually be as good as they've been, if not better.
I look at LSU even more from a fact just having to play there.
Yeah, having to play
I think
there
that's
is
going to
tough.
be a really, really
On a
tough-
Friday.
tough
Very difficult
game.
environment.
Is that on a Friday? That's on Black Friday.
It's on Black
It's
Friday.
on Black Friday.
Which, who knows, may
No,
work.
it's not. That's
Yeah.
on a Saturday.
I think it's on.
No,
Black
it's on
Friday.
No, it's on a Saturday.
It's on Saturday.
That's on Saturday.
It's on Saturday.
We played on Black Friday last year.
Yeah, it's on
Yes,
Saturday.
I'd be a
right.
lot more up in arms.
Really?
Yeah, it's on Saturday.
I'll triple check right now, but
It's on Saturday. Better be because I made reservations. But I'm kind of with you, Connor. I'm actually homeristic, a little optimistic. I think 9 is a good
on a
over
Saturday.
under.
I think 9 is, if you were going to be the house and you were 9 is a solid line.
Because you can definitely see.
I can see 8 and 4 for sure.
And
And
10 and 2 as well.
I think 10 and 2 is best case scenario.
I don't know about best case scenario, but it's.
I think
definitely-
10 and 2 is best case scenario.
12 and 0 is the best.
12
case
and 0.
scenario.
12 and 0 is best case.
Depending on how
10
this
and
offensive
2.
line shapes up, it's a toss up between 8 and 4 and 7 and 5.
Do we find out about the offensive line? What's the early? Is it naturally the Tennessee game?
Probably.
So Tennessee
'Cause
is
you've
a
got
team
Temple.
that is a little unproven. So like,
I don't think Houston's just a cupcake game.
It's not a cup
Probably
game, but
not.
it's
It's
just
not a
it
cupcake
should be
game.
a game that we roll through.
And they got a hell of a coach now.
yeah, but a coach is just so
Who's
good.
their coach now?
Guy from
Tulane.
Arizona. Or Tulane, yeah.
Fritz.
Willie Fritz.
But
not Willie Wood.
but he's
This
got to
team's
have the
tough.
players. But he's got to have the players. And
Well, they almost beat us.
With
Tulane
Tulane.
almost beat us here without the players.
I don't know why we keep referencing.
say it was the
that
same players. Yeah, I don't either. I don't think that is relevant.
Because I think Houston has better players than Tulane.
Yeah.
I don't.
Exactly.
That
game.
year?
Okay, we're also a completely
Yeah.
different team.
Yeah,
Yeah, probably better.
I bet probably not as good
I bet Houston's
What
better
is-
than Tulane.
than the Tulane of 3 years ago, of the 2021 season.
Well, I don't know. I don't know
about
about
that.
Houston's
that
roster.
Tulane, that Tulane was the best 3-9 team.
That was a very good Tulane team.
good 3-9 too. It was the Tulane team that beat USC that was much better.
That's right. So, good coach, but in all cases, I mean, we're sort of.
It's Houston.
I think you're digging deep to try and find pessimism when you look at these teams, and you're like the rosiest of scenarios. Like Tennessee has surprised to the upside, and they still haven't been a playoff level team.
And Josh Heupel
Mississippi
sucks on the
has
road.
surprised to the upside, and they haven't been a playoff level.
We lost to Houston with Baker Mayfield, Joe Mixon,
Yeah.
Samaje Perine.
But we didn't have a defense at all.
Okay, listen.
Yeah,
Without
bad
getting
call.
I'm just pointing it out. Just pointing it out.
Can we talk about a game that we lost in like 1964?
Without getting-
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
without
Andre Ware. We didn't play Andre Ware.
without getting too much into the, this is the SEC we're talking about here. A win at home against Tennessee is a damn good win.
Oh, hell of a win.
It's a hell of a win.
Hell of a win.
A win against any of these SEC teams that
Yes.
we're playing is a great win.
That's why.
a win at Auburn is a great
That's
win.
why
And Auburn
9.
was not a good team last
No,
year.
Auburn was
except
not.
they should have beat Bama.
Yeah, they should
It
have.
was a miracle.
Yeah.
And
Who
Bama
was?
wasn't that good. Bama was
Except they're
really
in the
not that
playoffs.
good. Yes.
Well, and again, yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking loudly
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
I'm
by-
just
to
saying,
that, yeah.
there is not.
we were the
every-
ones saying if OU makes a playoff, that'd be the playoff
So-
we want to make.
So when I look at OU, I'm going to look at OU a lot like Alabama of last year and Alabama of a few years in the past, where they've barely by the skin of their teeth made the playoff and not been, or arguably have barely been one of the top 4 teams. They're definitely a top 6 team. So I think OU has a capability of being in that realm in 2024.
Our O line is a 3-game swing.
If we win 9 games, do we
I
make
agree
the
with
12th
that.
team?
Yes. Depends on your
Which
three.
9? Yeah.
So let's say we lose to Texas, we lose to
LSU.
and we lose to Ole Miss.
I don't know. Those
All 3
are-
road games.
That's 3 big games. I mean, you got to win.
Quality losses.
Okay, let's sub out the Ole Miss for a Missouri.
I don't think that helps. But they're both road.
think
That's- that's-
They're both
That's
road
what I'm saying.
games.
I'm trying to lessen the.
I
They're
think,
both road games.
What if Utah can go through and lose one game in the Big 12, and then maybe, let's say, TCU comes back. Let's just pick another Big 12 team, TCU.
It's going to
And
be
they lose
hard.
one game.
It's,
I
so
think
something
it
we
would
should-
be-
something we
it's
should
gonna
do
be
for
the-
the.
I
for the
think it
Big
would be
12 to
better.
get 2 teams.
I think it would be
I
better
don't
to
think so.
beat an LSU and lose to Missouri. Like if you beat LSU and Bama and Tennessee, but you lost to, Missouri, Ole Miss, and someone
Texas.
in Texas, I think that's better. That's just me.
I think there's a lot of roads to the playoff.
I don't think it's hard for 2 Big 12 teams to get in. If a Utah loses one game, and let's say
I think it's tough.
TCU loses 2, and those 2 face off in the Big 12 title,
Okay.
and then the two-loss team beats
Okay.
Utah, you got 2 two-loss teams.
Okay, so
That's
so
2
two
of the
big
12.
So two Big 12,
Okay.
and let's say 2 ACC. That's 4 of the 12 spots.
Okay.
one at large,
So
One large.
one non-power 5.
yeah,
More than
not
likely.
more than
More than
likely.
likely.
So there's 5. Now you have
James Madison.
7 spots left
Between Big 10 and SEC.
in SEC. I think we can get into that.
I think at 9-3, the right 9-3.
Unless a Notre Dame pops up with 2 losses.
I don't even know if 2.
They may let a Notre Dame with 2
maybe.
losses in over an OU with 3
They're going to
losses.
have to. They're going to have to almost go wire to wire, really high ranked, and you're going to have to pick. And they're going to really have to pick.
I
and
mean, I don't know
choose
if they're
their
any good or
losses.
not.
Did they get a quarterback?
They did.
But I mean, assuming they're 10 and 2,
from Duke, Riley Leonard or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, because Colin Klein went to Notre Dame, right?
as
As a
the
offensive
OC,
coordinator,
yeah.
yeah.
Assuming they're 10 and 2, they're going to have to pick and choose their 2 losses, real deliberately.
Wait, he went to Notre Dame?
Leonard's going to get wrecked. Didn't Colin Klein go to
Colin
Notre
Klein
Dame?
went to Notre Dame?
I think so.
No, he went to.
And went to Ohio State or something, didn't he?
No, he went to.
I'm just saying, it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Penn State. Did he go to Penn State?
No, I don't think so.
No, he went to A&M.
A&M. Well, that's random.
So I would say a 10 and 2 OU is a lock for the playoff.
Oh yeah.
Nine-
yeah.
10 and 2.
a
absolutely.
9 and
Yes.
3 OU is
Probable.
70-30 in the playoff.
Would you want to be a 10 and 2 OU and not go to the SEC championship?
Probably.
So let's say you're 10 and 2.
yeah, and dodge that game.
and dodge the SEC championship.
No,
Yeah.
I think you always want to play that game because
Well,
if you
you
lose,
wanna
you're
play
in.
in it.
You're in.
But we're not saying that.
That's
We're
your
saying-
third loss.
We're saying if you're 10 and 2, you're a lock. Avoid the game, avoid the injuries, avoid the wear and tear, and prepare for your next game. I mean,
But if there's a 50-50 chance you beat Georgia in the SEC, you take that chance.
oh yeah, no, you take the chance. I'm not saying you.
And if you get the third
decline,
loss, you still
don't
might get
want
the
it.
11 seed.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Maybe.
That's true. But
This is going to be it's going to be
exciting.
crazy. It's going to be crazy talking. It's going to be crazy doing this podcast as an SEC football team. I can't even imagine. I can't.
Do you
fathom-
think-
We're doing it right now.
Do you think?
I know, and it's not. It's not really registering with it.
Do you think we'll be able to tell on the offensive line at all the first 3 weeks?
No.
You don't think we'll be able to tell at all?
No,
You don't think if
I'm gonna
the-
say not at all.
You
I'm
don't
gonna
think
say
if
you're
Jackson Arnold doesn't stay clean,
we're gonna
Oh,
be able to
oh.
see some stuff.
you would
you-
see,
if the
all right,
running back
all right.
doesn't have
You
huge
would,
holes,
You would. Here's
You'd see the
here's the way I
negatives, you're not
look.
gonna
You
see
would see.
any
Yeah,
positives.
you'd see the negatives. You wouldn't see the positives. So if we're really, really good, you would. At least one of us would be saying they're weak. Don't worry about it. We're awful. It's not going to be good. The realist take on
Yep,
it all.
one of us will say that.
But the rest of us would be saying, no, they're really good, or they're capable of being good. we would have to take it with a little bit of grain of salt if we just succeed. If we fail, that's bad. That's real bad.
Yeah, if Jackson Arnold has been sacked 7 times in those first 3 weeks,
It's scary.
It's a 7-win season.
What if he's got 7 interceptions in 3 weeks?
Oh, bad.
Yeah, that's they're concerned.
Has he thrown 20 touchdowns?
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Could just be a
Not in 3 weeks,
gunslinger.
he's not.
you never know.
I don't know. Temple? I
Well, he shouldn't be playing the second half against Temple.
hopefully not.
That should be
Yeah.
Casey Thompson more than
Yeah, and so you roll out Temple, and it's a cakewalk.
He's not throwing 7 interceptions the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, I don't think that.
He threw 4 in one game.
I'm not worried about
He's
that.
not
That's
throwing
against Arizona. We're not playing anybody as close to Arizona, and we're not as weak as we were going up.
And we
against
have an
Arizona.
offensive coordinator who's going to be calling his
Our offensive line's
offense.
going to be just as bad as it was against Arizona.
I don't. I know. I
Do
think
we
they'll
want
be
to make
much
the bet
better
of
than
7?
Arizona.
We want to take 7 interceptions as a bet. I mean,
Yeah, I
he
will
not throw
definitely.
7
I will
interceptions.
definitely
I was just
take
using
the
that as a
under on
hypothetical.
that.
No, it's actually a good question. Though. I mean, he did throw interceptions against Arizona. I mean, how many interceptions is acceptable in the first 3 weeks? 2.
2.
2.
For all 3 games combined?
Yes.
Oh, he's going to throw more too. So.
He shouldn't.
I'll put the over.
He's
under at 2.5.
he's a
He's
bit
not,
of a gunslinger.
He's not Brett Favre.
Yeah,
He's not Brett Favre.
he's a gunslinger.
He's not Dylan Gabriel.
He wants to
and
make
he's not Brett
plays.
Favre. He's not. I just don't.
He's not going to just tuck
but
it and
it's
not throw
gonna-
balls.
But it's going to take. But he will run, and it was.
no, but I'm just saying
It's going to take really bad decisions.
It's going to take
He's a-
really bad decisions
Yeah.
and real athleticism
he's
on
a
the part of
young
the opponent.
he's
that
a young
isn't
kid.
there.
He's a young kid that still trusts his arm too much.
I'll
I mean,
bet- I'll
if
bet
he has
you, Jay,
5
that he doesn't
interceptions
throw.
and 3 of them are on tipped balls,
Yeah, okay.
well, that's a different
That's
story.
different.
Yeah, we're not talking about that.
Yeah.
So
But if it's like the first interception he threw against Arizona was horrific.
Yeah, like he doesn't read a linebacker who has stepped in
Yes.
his space or
Yeah.
something. Yeah,
Then
yeah, I'm a little
the
concerned.
one that was coming towards our end zone where he just underthrew it and was interception.
on the double clutch,
That's a
and
bad
then-
interception.
And
so 2 of those were bad, really bad to me.
yes, but all that said, he
And
was
obviously
going up
Arizona's
against guys whose average age was 27 at Arizona. He's
It's
not
not
going
BYU.
to face
I mean,
that against these guys.
They were old. They were old.
They were a bunch of old veteran, and that was about as good of an Arizona team as you will see in the last 2 decades.
Yeah.
That's the best Arizona.
I mean,
team
it's
in the
it's
last 10
better.
years.
That's a better team that he's going to see up to Tennessee,
Right.
and then throughout
Actually,
even a lot of the
maybe
year.
better than Tennessee because they were a veteran team
Yeah.
at the end of a season
Yeah.
versus an early season Tennessee.
And their head coach is Josh Heupel, which we all know isn't that good.
And they got that.
Milton.
No, they got the freshman kid that
Oh, the kid that tore up
was a 5-star kid too. Yeah.
But their head coach is Josh Heupel.
He's fast.
Nothing to worry about there.
So let's talk about some other things that are a little more far afield. So I guess some coaches and some presidents or somebody have been floating the idea of a super league. What do you guys think about a super league? I've been talking about a super league.
How many teams?
I
was it?
guarantee you
How
for
many
at
teams is
least
Super League?
a decade.
There's
plus.
multiple different entities coming up with their proposals.
But they haven't even engaged the SEC or the Big Ten, from what I understand, about this.
It's hypothetical. It's very
is.
hypothetical.
And the initial proposal was 80 teams.
That was a different. The new one that came out like yesterday or today was by a group of guys that like did something with the golf tour, getting that whole monetary thing situated.
Well, we're an
and the
established podcast. Can we
NFL.
put a proposal forward?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think
good.
we should write up a proposal. I think, what have we been saying? I think we were talking at dinner, and some of us disagree, but 64 teams
I like 64.
is probably a decent model.
Before we get into who should or shouldn't be in it, the thing that's attractive about 64 is it's divisible by 8. It starts to be
Or 16.
or 16 and works really well into playoff situations, into conference breakdowns, into sub-conferences, however you want to divide it. It makes it real nice and organized. I also
You can
happen
keep your
to
regional
think
stuff, too.
you keep your regional stuff. I also happen to think that it works really well in terms of the teams that I think of the 100 and what is it now 33, 34 teams that are in this top FBS division. I think it's, if you want to say,
Cut in half.
cutting them in half, and it gives us the group that there's enough talent that, especially as it shakes out over a few years, after a few years, you've got talent moving towards and solidifying in concentrating in a 64 team league that makes sense. I think that it makes sense from the standpoint of just your supply side of what you've got in terms of athletes and what you've got in terms of programs that are serious about it. That's part of it. Who's serious about playing football at this level? Kansas is not serious about playing football at this level, despite their grandiose
$300 million stadium or something.
Yeah, sure.
And they got a real coach now. I believe in their
I'm really
coach.
glad someone flushed that money down the drain.
Yeah, they're not serious
they're gonna
about
be
football.
really good.
They're contenders in the Big 12 now. What are you
Indiana's
guys
not
talking about?
serious about football. Vanderbilt.
That Kansas team beat us last year, by the way,
Yes, they did.
I don't know why we
because we couldn't get a first down.
revisiting
Yeah,
Because our offensive
Yeah, I
coordinator
wouldn't
was
dwell
garbage.
on nonsense. That's just
They almost
silly.
beat us with a Heisman winning quarterback.
I heard that
2 years before.
I heard that Jaleel Farouk made some money off that Kansas game last year as well. So
Ah, interesting. So, how many teams do you guys think there should be? Connor says 64.
Let's get a start right
I like
now.
64.
And how many teams are in the Power 4 currently?
you're gonna make me count this real quick.
The Big 10, are they at 18 now?
Yes,
Okay.
we're at 16.
the
in
Big
SEC.
12 is at 14?
16.
They're at 16 now?
16.
Okay, because they added the 4 packed schools. So
Their
they're at
50?
SEC is 16.
So 50 plus the ACC. That's where we're at. Well, that's
So-
your 64.
That's 64 right there.
Basically, they're your big four.
And
or
that's
your
not
64.
So you just take the Power 5.
And that's
Power
not
4.
including Washington State, Oregon State, Boise State, Notre Dame,
Stanford, Cal.
Stanford, Cal. If you no, that is is the ACC 16 without Stanford
yeah.
and Cal?
I don't know.
So
yeah.
we start to get a lot of teams.
It's your power four, period.
How far back do you want to go to say teams are serious about football?
Like ranking?
Like 2000. Like, do you want to look at from 2000 to 2023, 24 years of football?
Sure.
So here
We call that modern football.
I mean, if you've already
right?
got that stat pulled up, that sounds great.
I do. Okay. So the 64th team, I'm going to go from 64 back for a few to just give you a flavor for. Well, actually, let me go to 70. So 70 is Middle Tennessee State. At 69, this is the winning percentage over the last 24 years. Middle Tennessee State, Hawaii, Maryland, Southern Miss, Louisiana Lafayette, Western Michigan. Those are those that don't make that cut. They're on the bubble.
That's non-power.
The 64th
My
best team, and by record, is Memphis, South Florida,
Still not.
Arkansas, Oregon State, Northwestern, Georgia Southern, Western Kentucky, Minnesota, and I could keep going. So some of these names make sense by name. That's not necessarily fair. Some of them don't make sense by name. Again, not necessarily fair. But I think that
I mean, a Western Kentucky winning percentage versus an Arkansas winning percentage is not even ground to me. But
Yeah, that's true.
well, that's exactly because winning percentage isn't everything. If we're in a true relegation league, it would be. But we've got to look at who's serious about football.
I think we
And
should
part
do
of
the-
who's serious about football
I think we
is
should do the top
who puts-
64 recruiting rankings.
well. I think you could also look at the top 64 stadiums in attendance. You could look
Yeah.
at those type of because those are the guys that are serious about football. And we're South
Sounds like you're
Carolina's
dying to do a formula.
South Carolina is 43. Texas Tech is 41. Houston's 46. Stanford's 49. So UTSA is 50. Depending on
They've
how
only been a
far you
program
go
for
back.
like 5 or 6 years, I feel like.
Yeah, not a lot of years. Let's see. Yeah, not a full slate in the 24
And again,
years.
there'll never be a team that is contending.
Tennessee is 39.
Right. So my
Nebraska
thought
is
was
36.
48.
Nebraska is tied with Marshall at 36 and Missouri at 36. So it's hard to draw that line and say, like, you're not going to just take the SEC because that would include Vanderbilt.
I think you have to do a combination of.
Yeah, I got to take the Big Ten because it includes Rutgers.
And Indiana.
I think you have to
Maryland,
do a
Illinois.
combination of prestige.
Well, you
That's
can't measure
completely
that.
subjective.
You can't measure that.
I can't even. I think it's there. I think everyone knows it's
Find
there.
me a metric.
It's there.
It's like when we do our blue blood.
You name a
discussion.
team and
It's
you like,
subjective.
It is subjective, but you also let him self-subject. So I think you approach like it's we go to the top of the list.
I'm just saying, you name a team, you're like, okay, yeah, I can see that.
the top
Right.
the top
You
5.
can't say. You don't say that.
This is interesting. The top 5
I think you should
And-
do attendance.
and all of them are there. Tell me the one that doesn't make sense. The old Sesame Street, one of these things is not like the others. Ohio State, Boise State, Oklahoma, Georgia, Alabama.
Yeah, okay.
But
Bluefield, I
so
think.
obviously the Bluefield team is not so winning percentage isn't everything.
Another team that beat us.
I think Boise should be in.
But maybe they should be because maybe
pla-
they're
in place
serious
of
about
Vanderbilt- in
about
place of
football.
Vanderbilt,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah, if you look at Boise
State is
versus Vanderbilt, you say,
110% in
who are
on
you-
football.
Between the two of you, who is serious about
Yes,
football?
Boise.
By far, it's Boise
Yeah.
State. And who's got the fan support? By far, Boise State. So I think you self-select. You say,
And who
all right, guys,
doesn't wanna
we're going to make
go
a
to
64.
Idaho?
We're going to make a 64 league. Who wants in? And here's the price tag.
Yeah.
Who wants in? And we can tell the teams that immediately are going to want in, and we can tell the teams that are on the bubble they're going to
Because Lucas and I were talking about this before. Like, technically, you probably leave an Arkansas out. Well, we were talking more like a 48
48 team.
You would leave
That
an
was my
Arkansas
thought.
out of a
Arkansas
48 team league.
They might get let
But
out.
you can't leave
have
Arkansas out.
FBS 1 is
Right.
48 teams.
That's what's strange.
And that goes-
FBS
and that
2
goes-
is the next 48
That goes back to your
teams.
prestige.
And the rest of them are
You've got-
inconsequential.
And you've got too many powerful people.
Well, that's the thing. Maybe in
From
you have
Arkansas
to
that played
differentiate
in-
somewhat with the price tag because Vanderbilt can meet a price tag. I think that's why they're in the SEC.
Maybe, maybe not. The only reason they might not is you basically approach them and say, here's the cost to get in, here is the benefit to get out. And if you treat
Do you
them...
think Vanderbilt's school suffers without the football team?
No,
I don't either.
not at all.
So I don't think they would care if they're in.
They're cash cows baseball.
No, the only thing they want is the other sports and the fact that they are an SEC.
and they're
But
aligned
those
to-
be
they're
in the
aligned
other
to
sports.
SEC.
Well, yeah, but they've
They'll
got...
stay in the other sports.
But
The
they're still
problem
going to
is-
play football. They would just be in a lower division with a
They might
chance
have a better
to win.
chance.
Exactly.
Yeah, you
Now,
can sell this
you have to
idea
get
to
them
the
out.
Georgia Techs, to the Vanderbilts, to the NC
Yes.
States.
But they're
you
under
can sell the
contract.
idea to them that you're not in the 48. I'm saying 48. Y'all are saying 64.
Regardless.
If you take the second 48, they're a separate national championship. So North Dakota State comes into that maybe or whatever. James
Yeah.
Madison went.
Oh, in that...
They went up from Division II or whatever FCS to FBS, and they've killed it the last two seasons.
SMU as well. SMU is someone with
Tulsa.
a lot of money who
So,
could.
yeah...
Tulsa would have a chance.
That's what
of
it would come down
being
to.
a top 20
So-
team in that.
In the reality of it, you've got Vanderbilt, who is a contractual member of the SEC, and so you're going to have to pay them to get out, or they're going to have to pay to get in. So you basically say, here's the price tag. You want a payday, or do you want to pony up to what it takes to get in here? And you present the same thing to SMU. The difference for SMU, of course, is you're a differently contractual member of the ACC. Your membership here is a little more contingent. You're going to have to pay to get in. They got a lot of money. They may want to do it.
Well,
I
and you
don't
can
know.
figure something out too, where if you can try it, and again, it'll never be on the same plane, right? Like D1 is D, or the top division is the top division, second division.
Right.
But if you can figure out how to prop up the quote unquote prestige of the
second one.
second tier to say you are the best of the rest,
That's all going to come to TV contracts.
and it is exactly, and that's kind
If
of my second point.
ESPN can
If
sell
ESPN
them on the idea that
Right.
or Fox. Fox
Yeah,
takes over
whoever.
D2 and says, "This is our prime. Like this is look at this matchup this week. We have NC State, SMU, like the top dogs of this Division II tier, or even you start dabbling into North Dakota State. All these D2 teams who have won national championships, who have gone and challenged Division I teams, have occasionally beat Division I teams, and say, hey, this is also an opportunity for the people who don't get the exposure until it's their quote-unquote playoff or their postseason. Now they're getting a chance to say, hey, we get to go play NC State, and we get to go play SMU on a week-in, week-out basis to make this model say, Steve, to your point, this is good for you. Like, you're part
This is where you want to be.
if you're part of the 64, you're just going to fall in the back end. You're going to be the team that everyone beats up on and enjoys because you're a cupcake game. Or you can go be somewhat of a contender or a player in this other division and actually put some banners up, you know?
And not just banners. That's a real important point, or it's a barometer proxy for a lot of other things. But you can succeed and have fun and enjoy where you are in that place in the world. So
Is it better for Vanderbilt to go 8-4 in that second division than go 3-9 in what they're in now? To me, it would be
3-9. They won't be 3-9 in a 64 team. They'll be 0-12.
I just mean it's current.
Yeah.
I mean,
yes.
they're currently
Right.
going 3-9,
Right.
or you can go 8-4
But that's
in
not the
this other
trade-off.
division, and
In the
your
other
fans will enjoy it.
But in that
more.
world, it would be 0-12 versus 8-4.
Yeah.
And you can also say, do you want to be where do you want to be in this realm of NIL and everything else? And so you've got a school like Kansas, and you say, look, Kansas, you've got your donor pool, you've got your interest. It's obviously basketball centric. Where do you want to concentrate your dollars? Do you want to be a top school in basketball and not have to try and be the top school in football and be a more amateur league in football and be content with that and actually have a winning program, a lot of success, the kids have fun going to those games and all of that, and just know that that's your role in the world in football, but in basketball you're a top school and you can concentrate and specialize in that. I think that trade-off makes a lot of sense for that team in that school.
In my system, it was 48, and you'd have 4 12-team divisions, essentially. And you can go back to your regional stuff. The Pac-12 could actually be the Pac-12 again. You've got
divide the country up geographically.
right.
Yeah.
So you got Pac-12, Big 12-ish,
Yeah.
Big Ten,
SEC.
SEC picks up some of the
ACC,
ACCs,
yeah.
because they're gonna dump off Mississippi State. They're gonna dump
And
off
some of them go north
Vanderbilt.
to the Big Ten, yeah.
Right.
Well, and I think you play. I mean, I'm going way down this rabbit hole, so bear with me. But you could even set it up where if you want to try to kind of put a little bit of a balance on a scale, you say at the start of the next season, I don't like the word exhibition, but you make it count towards something. You could pit the best D1 team who won the championship against the champion D2 team as this kind of, preseason bowl game to say D1 versus D2. Like, you get to match.
See what it looks like.
Look, because people want to see that. Like, people want to be like, hey, like this, we can play with the D1 teams and all this
Well,
stuff.
then you
Like,
get to
wanna-
introduce ideas like relegation.
relegation. Exactly.
And then you might actually get to that kind of a world.
And
which
that's where
to
it
me is
starts
a
making
rational
sense.
world.
And exactly. And there's way too much logic in that for it to ever be a thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that you'd have to obviously overcome the powers that be and people with vested interests. But if you structure it correctly, I think all of that can happen because
I think
everyone
it
wins.
should happen.
Everyone wins.
I think it's harder in college football because I'm a big EPL fan, so I watch the 3 teams from Premier League go down and 3 teams from Championship come up. But they set their schedule every year.
Yeah.
It'd be hard to say
Sure.
these 48 teams, the bottom 4 going down and then the top 4 of that next league come up.
And then you regionalize them and all this other
It'd
stuff.
be hard to do because you're moving so many parts every single season based on you can't schedule anything out
Well, you'd have to-
year to
yeah,
year.
logistics
It might have
is
to be
tough.
designed a little bit different for the logistics, but to me, the biggest obstacle is getting your mind around the idea, and it's not us getting our minds around it because we're in the luxury of being Oklahoma. We
Right.
don't have to worry about it. It is the Oklahoma States of the world who have to decide what they want to be.
Well, and
And
if you
to
want
be-
to circumvent, we saw OU and Texas circumvent a contract that was supposed to take us out until the end of 2025, and said no, we're gonna.
And everyone said
buy
that's
ourselves
good.
out. And
And we didn't pay a penny
exactly,
if you look at it.
exactly. And if these teams or if these presidents or whomever want to make it work,
They can make it work.
they can make it work. We're seeing teams fly. We're going to see Stanford fly to the East Coast to play an ACC schedule.
So it still doesn't make sense yet, and yet I think it's evolving to a point where eventually it will start. It has to sort itself out.
You can make it make more sense.
It'll make more and more sense as time goes on, and teams will realize, you know what, this isn't for us. They've made it too difficult. Well, yeah, because you're just not serious about competing at this level of football. Something
and like
else,
you said, we're lucky because we're Oklahoma.
we are Oklahoma.
And we don't really have to sit in a spot where, like, man, like 10 years from now,
Well, we get
might
left
not
out.
have we might not have a football program, or we may not have a football program that means anything
Right.
because right now we're on the fringe.
So another thing that doesn't make a lot of sense is something that we heard out of the president, Joe Harris, saying something off the cuff about basically he was thinking about moving the new arena or entertaining the idea of the new arena, if there's a new arena, being in any other city other than Norman, if Norman doesn't approve the new arena that they want. So maybe we'll have the Sooners playing in Moore.
The Moore Sooners?
Or the Moore Sooners or Blanchard. I mean, they're not the
It's
Norman
still Oklahoma,
Sooners.
yeah.
It's still Oklahoma. Moore is about the only contender that I could see actually happening in that hypothetical.
I can see Newcastle.
What do you guys think about that that comment and all the everything around it?
I think the fact that he put that out in a public forum is ridiculous.
Strictly blackmail. That's what
It
sounds like the Oakland A's guy saying, if you're not going to build a new stadium, I'm going to Las
It's
Vegas.
blackmail, but at that point, it's like, if you're that, dissolve the basketball program. Like,
Yeah.
I don't even, like, if no one is serious enough to say, we want this for you, or maybe the entertainment district or everything else that you want that comes along with this stadium.
Nobody's going to Newcastle to watch OU
Well,
basketball.
my thought was
No one's going to go, like,
the land just to the west of Riverwind. they
No
built a
one's
stadium.
going there.
Do what?
That's
No one's
still
going
Norman,
there.
But yeah.
No one's going that far.
Riverwind's Newcastle. It's not
No,
Norman.
Riverwind's Norman.
Nope, it's not.
It's Norman.
It's not.
It's definitely Norman.
I know the
it's
neighborhood
stupid.
west of that goes to
I think
high school
I
and
think
stuff,
it is
Norman.
stupid. I think it's dumb.
People in Oklahoma City go.
I don't think,
more.
and
It's not-
on the record, I will say, I do. OU basketball, for as long as OU basketball as a program, is not going to play anywhere else except Norman. Freaking have the conversation about renovating the field house and having basketball games there. If you're
the biggest problem that their problem is, they hear people that live in Edmond that say they can't make it to a 6 o'clock tip off because the traffic getting from I-35 through Moore, Norman, and then across Highway 9 is the problem with them not making it the game. So I'm calling BS. People,
shit.
When people win, when this
Win a
place,
game.
when this school wins, the thing is full.
I was at
I went
at
to-
OU. We were at multiple games this year.
Yeah,
Big
I went to
games
5
this
games,
year.
yeah.
And the place for Lloyd Noble was packed. And if you put a winning product on the court, you're not going to have any issue. And whether it's Lloyd Noble or anywhere else in Norman, you're not going to have problems putting butts in the
I was
seat.
there in the Billy days. I was there in the Kelvin days. I was there.
When
Capel,
Blake Griffin-
when
Blake
Blake Griffin was here,
and
that place was packed.
Buddy Hield.
When Buddy Hield was there, it was packed. When Trey Young, the one year he was here, it was packed because we were winning.
Yep.
And when winning cures all.
Yep.
No matter how that stadium's almost, or that arena's almost 50 years old. That's what they always blah 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 50 years.
Fire
But-
Mosier.
It's not. It's conducive to filling it up with winning.
So I would completely agree. I have two major problems with the statement that he made. As I understood it, I heard it kind of secondhand, so I would give him a chance to explain it. But here's my two big problems with it. Don't ask me to pay for it. As a Norman resident, don't ask me to pay for it. You want to build something that's great. You are an entity that has lots of money. You have donors. You have a product you're trying to support. The donors and the product should pay for it. If you want to do it, do it. But don't make me pay for it. And don't threaten me that you're going to move it away, because to me, it's a little bit of an abrogation of your duty as the president of the University of Oklahoma to say, we're going to put this and we're going to forward as a we'll go anywhere it needs to go type of proposition. You either are or not committed to the University of Oklahoma, which is in Norman. And it's problematic to say we're just going to go for the highest bidder and wherever that's going to take us. And I completely agree. Solve your problem, which is winning. If you had a winning program that was, I don't know, in the tournament of 64 teams any time in the last 3 years, maybe you'd have something, you wouldn't, but maybe you'd have a little bit more to go on. But if people aren't coming because the arena's 48 years old and it's located too far away from the people in Edmond, then one, let's see what it looks like when you're actually winning. And two, let's think about your other options, because the Lloyd Noble on Highway 9 is not that much further away than Oklahoma Gaylord Memorial Stadium is, and we get 80+ thousand every time for that because they win. So
And guess what? Those same people who don't want to drive down to Edmond for basketball games are
Driving.
driving down from Edmond at
and
11
spending
a.m.
more time.
Yeah. That,
I got an even better example when you're talking smaller numbers, though. Do you think people from Edmond go watch softball?
Right.
I mean, obviously that stadium, what is it holding, 1,500? Or no, what does it hold now? The new one?
4,000.
4,000.
Yeah.
So, but they could sell more tickets if they had a bigger place.
Right.
Because why? They're winning.
Yeah.
And they're
People
playing
can make
they're
it from Edmond
playing
for
at what time?
a 6:15.
They're playing at
hit
2
first
o'clock in
pitch.
the afternoon
Yeah,
in
Yeah.
a sold out stadium
on a Friday.
on a Friday.
Yeah.
But I mean,
But not a Saturday.
You're making
Yeah.
a 2 o'clock game on a Friday. You can make a 6 o'clock game on a Tuesday.
Right.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with all of that. I think that you're trying to ask other people, you're just trying to tap into other people's money. You're trying to ask for something that comes from somebody else. And that to me is frustrating and problematic. And I have an aesthetic aversion to the idea that you're going to relocate a university sport away from the university. I know that it's not that far away, but it's pretty far away if you locate it up where they want to locate it on that little spot by the airport. It's not the same as being on campus. It's going to be very difficult for students to get there, and if you're going to bill it as some other type of arena that's going to attract concerts and all this other stuff, now we're down the road of we can talk about that, and that model just does not prove out at all. And you're competing with a lot of other venues if you're trying to do that. That's an economic
including
decision.
the brand new funding for the stadium
For the
that's gonna
Thunder.
go downtown.
Yeah, so you don't need to ask the taxpayers to pay for that. You can go find that private funding if there's actually a viable business model to support all of that. So that's ancillary. I think what you're really getting to is where's the best place to play the basketball games. And if you need a new place, and I understand the problems, both the mental overcoming as well as the true logistical issues with getting down to Lloyd Noble, the Fieldhouse in that general locale is a good location. There are other locations, but you can pay for it yourself, and let's see what it is.
Yeah.
If it's such a great idea, you should be willing to pay for it yourself. You shouldn't be asking the Norman taxpayers to pay for it.
And you know what's funny is they want to build all this stuff, and the thing I'm concerned about is someone who lives 5 minutes from there. You're going to build this stadium. You're going to build this arena. You're going to build this entertainment district, and you're acting as if that itself is going to translate to wins. And we go back to the fact
Absolutely.
everything we've just said, if it doesn't translate to wins, that entertainment district turns into Bricktown.
Yeah,
And it turns into a
flop.
ghost town. It turns into and I use this term very loosely, it turns into a ghetto where you have people there that don't need to be there because there's nothing else going on. They don't have anything else to do. And there's something that's kind of exciting going on, but it's not super exciting. And it breeds just a very bad culture. I think it actually could be detrimental to what they're trying to establish.
Oh, I think you're right. I don't think. If you look at the successful basketball programs, how many of those basketball programs play away from their campus? Does Duke play away from their campus?
we're not Duke.
Does Kansas play away from their campus? Who are you trying to be?
Right. And that's the thing. If we were as good as that and we just needed a new stadium and we didn't have anywhere to put it, fine. Okay. Because we're still going to go win basketball games and people are still going to go to those games.
Yeah.
We're not that. We're far from that.
No, it's a great example of trying to solve the wrong problem. And the problem is you're not winning basketball games.
Yeah.
We'll go figure out the stadium situation later. The
I don't care
idea
if
that the
there's two people in
stadium
the
will
crowd.
solve
Win
basketball,
games.
yeah, that is not going to get you. I mean, is that going to get you a better coach, or is that going to make this coach a winner? I don't understand that. at all.
Every big game that we've had there in the past 3 to 4 years has been a massive, massive letdown in my opinion. I can't remember the last. We beat Alabama last year, I think.
Yep,
They were the number 2 team.
number one team.
Number 1 team. That was the biggest win we've had there since we beat Kansas in the
96 or something.
they were yeah, it feels like that. But I mean, it was like 2015, 16, something
Right.
like that. But I mean, we haven't won a lot of big basketball games at the Lloyd Noble.
Who owns the property to the south of Lloyd, counting the parking lot? Lloyd Noble that goes to Highway 9. There's that little RC landing strip where they have model planes and stuff.
That's all university.
Oh, yeah, it's all university property. Seems like you could probably build a new arena
right there.
right there. Literally like 300 yards south of the current location.
Even
They
if-
could build a brand new ass arena
You wouldn't even have to do that. You
and
could
tear down the old one, and that would be new parking.
you could play one season
Somewhere
at the
else.
Fieldhouse.
Yeah.
One season while you redid the entire Lloyd Noble.
You could tear down the field house and put it there, which would be a perfect venue from a number of standpoints. One, it would be central on campus. Two, it could be the model and size of what you want to build.
If you just eliminate that parking lot at the field house and you expand the field house to consume the parking lot,
You've got
you
enough
make that
space.
an extremely competitive venue. And it's walkable for every student that's on campus. It's a lot easier for apparently the people in Edmond to get there. It's a venue that you want to be at. Like I want to experience the game. When I'm at the Lloyd Noble right now, and again, this is in favor of something new, and whether it's a renovation to Lloyd Noble or an expansion, which I'd rather have of the field house, I want to feel like Gallagher-Iba is amazing. I want to feel like I'm at Gallagher-Iba, but I want to feel like I'm at an OU game, right? And I think you can do that. And you have the infrastructure to do it. You have the money to do it. I don't want to pay for it, Steve, to your point. Like, that's what's so funny is they want to pick the pocket of everybody else to go get them something that doesn't translate to anything.
I don't know why they're so stuck on this idea of the entertainment district around the arena. It doesn't make any sense
It
to me.
doesn't make any sense at all.
Me either. And that's coming from someone.
Unless they're trying to garner attendance via
People who are
it's just
around.
more of an outing.
But that never
a lot that has
translates.
to happen.
That never happens, right? I mean, that there's no proof that ever will materialize. The newness will wear off, and the newness won't even fill the place up. People are going to sour on it, and they're not going to want to come unless they're winning. And if you're winning, you could play in a gym in Oklahoma City anywhere, and they're going to show up to watch you play.
I mean,
you
when
go to Norman High School.
Yeah.
And
when
you
you
could have
when you go to a
Samuel
Thunder
Moore.
game, it's not an outing. Not everybody's going down to Bricktown to eat and then walk over to a Thunder game.
No, and
People
that's
are
the
driving.
myth of what they all
People are
rely
driving
on.
to a Thunder game and they're going in and they're getting in their car and going home.
Exactly, and that's the myth of all of the so-called economic analyses that they run on these things, that they presume that people are going to make an entire evening of it and spend some enormous amount of money every time for every game, and they multiply it out and say, oh, look at the impact.
And
They're,
look
they're
at
not
your
going to
point.
own
It's
these restaurants that are
ridiculous.
outside this
It's
entertainment.
ridiculous.
They're wanting to lease them to, Buffalo Wild Wings or whatever other places
They're wanting
around
they're
there.
wanting to build apartment complexes, which is what they've already started over there. But Lucas, to your point,
What does that have to do with the university?
but exactly, it's not, and not only that, with the entertainment district, when it's a 6 o'clock tip, I'm not going to go eat dinner. I'm grabbing something on the way, or I'm bringing something from home that I can eat in the car, or I'm going to eat dinner at the stadium.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to get to the game.
Well, and
I
if
don't
I'm
want to go to the game unless it's worth going
if I'm a donor with a lot of money, and they're asking me to help pony up for this, I'm going to say, well, wait a second. I'll tell you how I think I can actually have an impact on this program. I'll provide for NIL so you can go get some players to surround yourself with a good coach.
Show me
and we'll
you can
actually win.
Yeah, show me you can win.
Not an arena.
Right.
I don't, because quite frankly, I'm going to watch most of those games on TV.
They're wanting to go to step 6. We're on step 1 still.
Yep, win
Truly.
games. Win games.
And
Well, and-
we're far from succeeding in that first step.
And to piggyback on what you guys are talking about, through the football program over the last 15, 20 years, it's been an arms race of how do we get recruits here via weight rooms and amenities and all this other stuff. And now football has started shifting from, well, NIL is
People
more
don't care about that
important
as much.
than how cool is your locker room. Does it have its own ventilated air conditioning system in it? No,
Which is
I'd
funny
rather
because-
have
in a barbershop.
$30,000 in my pocket.
But which is funny, we just built the Griffin Center less than 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And it's quote unquote state of the art in terms of college basketball. It's one of the best facilities out there. Nobody cares about that. Where is that translated into what?
Getting athletes.
One Final Four, and I think it was just built when we made the Final Four.
Right, so
And then
hardly
what?
attributable to it.
One tournament win in the past 5 years and a couple of appearances. It doesn't translate. So I don't know. It's so backwards.
Yeah, I think the
and-
keeping up with the Joneses in terms of facilities isn't the way to go.
No, it's run its course.
I think Harris kind of made himself look a little silly, to be honest.
I agree, and it worries me a little bit about priorities and where their focus is. Well, let's wrap it up. We'll be back to talk about, if nothing else, we'll be back we can talk about when we're going to be back, but maybe
One more time before the spring game?
Maybe one more time before the spring game, and then the spring game wrap up, and tell you what we saw, the sights and sounds of all that.
Hopefully we get some good weather for that.
Hopefully we get really good weather, not storms. We've had storms threatening us for a couple of different years recently. And
If we're all still alive after the eclipse.
well, there's no doubt about it. The end of times are coming on
Yeah.
Monday. Hey, good luck with the eclipse.
I hope you guys
And-
bought your food supply.
Yeah, well, for those of us not going to heaven immediately.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
The rapture, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
But other than that, until then, Boomer.
Sooner.